How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is our first night. I want to welcome you to be here with us this evening. We thank you for coming. We are a small group this evening. All of Truro has been invited. Well, God knows who needs to be here for tonight. We thank you for coming. So for our presentation tonight, we're looking at optimal health and how do we obtain it. And it's not just for older people, for Hiresh and Haresh, your friend. It's for everyone so that we can have the best healthy body to do everything that we're supposed to. So with us in our presentation tonight is Dr. Kendra-lee Pearman. She's also from Bermuda, like where I'm from. And she comes here with a lot of experience on helping people reach optimal health. She left home in Bermuda, her children, 3 children and 4 grandchildren, but she's also helped, and are here with her husband as well, Troy, but she's helped many to realize how to get that optimal health. So although few in number tonight, we're happy that you are here, and we hope that you will enjoy the presentation. So I'm going to have Dr. Kendra-lee come and start presenting this beautiful topic. Okay? Good evening, Noel. Do you mind if we just bow our heads for a minute? Okay, loving gracious Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for another day. It's cold out here and snowy, but we're grateful, Lord, that we are able to see it. And so now as we look at health versus disease tonight, we pray for your presence and your blessing. And if those are on their way, we ask you to hasten their footsteps. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, so it's really nice to be here. This is the first time I've been on this side of the world, Halifax. And it was interesting because I live in Bermuda, and so we took a straight line up because we're on the same time zone as Halifax. So it's exactly the same time. So at least I didn't have to worry about having jet lag or being tired, etc. So that was a good thing. And so tonight I want us to talk about the health-disease continuum, understanding causes, effects, and solutions. And so what I like to do is share, and then I'll ask if you have any questions, and then I'll share some more, and then if you have any questions, and then at the end, if you have any burning questions that you didn't ask, we can certainly do that. How does that sound? That sounds okay? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so, all right, so you can see we've got quite a bit what we're going to talk about today, but we're going to look at health versus disease, the continuum. And then we're going to look at what causes disease, and then biblical and contemporary perspectives, and then we'll look at the connection between cause and effect, and then the cost of disease. And then we're going to look at some holistic strategies for addressing these connections. And then if you have any questions, okay? Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to stay. All right. So this information is not intended as medical advice. It's really sharing of information, experiences that I've had, and knowledge that I have procured over the years. Okay, so health versus disease, the continuum. Are you building health or are you inviting disease? Does anyone want to answer that? Are you building health or are you inviting disease? So I'll give you a pass right now, but then we'll see what we look like as we move along. Okay, so here's a continuum. And you can see that there are opposites. You have abundant health, and then you have debilitating illness. And both of these are 5%. So out of a world's population, this is just an average of what it looks like when we look at health versus disease. And so you have this 5% of people that have this abundant health. meaning that they are existing, they are enjoying life, and they subsist off of very little. I've never met anyone that's in that 5%, but they say that they exist. And then you have on the other end, you have the debilitating illnesses, and these are people who actually have advanced degenerative diseases, and they are considered debilitating. So these are people that, they can't get out of bed, their quality of life is pretty much null and void, they're existing. But then you have this optimal health, and that's where I'm striving to be, and that's 15 to 20% of people. And they have this general sense of wellness. They have a biochemical and a bioenergetic balance. But then look at the largest number. There's that suboptimal group, 70 to 75%. And these are people who are sick, okay? These are people who have degenerative conditions, and they are the walking sick. And so if you look at those numbers, that's the largest group that is existing in our world today. And so you may ask the question, well, what is health? Now, if you go to the doctor, you may get a clean bill of health. You go and they say, oh, everything's looking great. And I had one of my clients, he had that experience recently. He went to the doctor and he had a clean bill of health. And about 3 months later, he called me and he was like, I have diabetes. And he was shocked. And I said to him, well, you didn't get that overnight. This is something that has been there. And you didn't develop that from the time you had a clean bill of health until now. And so, generally speaking, sometimes you may get a clean bill of health, but there may be things that are happening inside of your body that you may not be aware of. And so, from just a dictionary perspective, health is the state of the living organism where all of its functions and processes are being carried out without any real issues. That's what the definition of health would be. And then disease would be where there's things are happening, you're going through your life, but there may be a function that's not going right. You may have a headache, okay? Or you may have, high blood pressure. But then I like the right side of the definition where health is if one possesses it, it's easy to maintain it. I've taught at the college level for many years, and I should tell my students, everyone starts with an A. And if you do your assignments, and if you turn in your work, and you come to class, and you participate, you'll maintain that A. However, if you fall back, and you don't do all of those things, then it's a possibility that you won't have an A at midterm. But the beauty is, if you realize that at midterm, there's still something that you can do about it. And we have such an awesome God, even if we have not taken care of our health, He's so good to us that if we go before Him and we ask for help, He will give it to us. It's just like that student who may not have a passing grade at the midterm, but they may come to the professor and say, I know I messed up the first half, but can you give me some grace? And as a professor, I've given my students grace, and then they've ended up at the semester with an A, even though they may have had a C at midterm. And so I like that definition. And if it has been impaired, just like the student, it can be restored and repaired in the same way and by the same agencies that maintain health. And so the same way that a student, if they missed assignments, they can do the assignments. They may not get an A, but at least they don't have a 0. You guys have been to college, right? You know how that is, right? At least you have a grade as opposed to having a 0. Now, on the other hand, disease does not develop suddenly. And it's just like I said about my client. He didn't have high sugar or glucose just overnight. It was something that was building and building until it was enough to actually show in his blood work. And so it's the same thing with disease. It doesn't happen, it doesn't develop overnight. It's years and years and months of where you have not taken care of yourself in one way or another, and then eventually it shows up. And so what causes disease? Do any of you have any idea or what you think causes disease? Anyone? Why do we get sick? No one?
Poor eating habits.
Poor eating habits, thank you. Anyone else?
Poor sleeping habits.
Poor sleeping habits, okay.
Bad situation of life. Like
Bad situations in life, okay. Stress, emotional, okay. That's all really great answers. So what we're going to do is take a look and say, what actually causes disease? Now there's a couple of different schools of thought out there, and these are all from a naturopathic perspective, because there's not a real traditional way of saying why we get sick. But there's one that talks about toxemia. Have you heard of toxemia before? So generally, if sometimes you may hear about it with a pregnant woman, she may develop preeclampsia or toxemia when she's pregnant. But there's a condition called toxemia, and it's actually the poisoning of the blood. And what this theory looks at is the fact that wrong habits of eating and sleeping, which you said, working and recreation, actually cause the body to take in these different poisonous substances. And that's like the alkaloids and the poisonous acids. And then these actually weaken the eliminated functions of the body. And so the body remains toxic. And as a result, they stay in and they don't leave the body. And then there's an accumulation of uric and oxalic and then sulfuric acids in the blood, which are deposited into the organs. And I like to say that the cardiovascular system, where the body pumps the blood all around, it's like a transportation system. And it's like, you know, if you have a train system, the train goes along and it stops, it picks up people, and then it goes along and it stops and it picks up people, and people get off and they get on. Well, that's just like our cardiovascular system. Our blood is running all through our body. And if we have these uric acids or the oxalic acids or the sulfuric acids, they then get deposited into, they get picked up when it gets into the bloodstream from the liver, and then it gets deposited in certain organs of the body, okay? And depending on whether or not we have stressed organs, whether we have not adhered to the laws of health, and as a result, that particular organ can become weak, okay? And disease generally goes where the body part is weak. And so in this regard, you have these deposits that are being made. Maybe it's in your kidneys, maybe it's in your lungs, right? Because the blood is going all through the body. And then after years and years of accumulation, you may end up with a lump or something that's there, but it's been being deposited all through your life, okay? And so disease is made manifest to us when we have symptoms, okay? Everybody goes through life and you feel great. It's not until you have symptoms that you can actually start to say, something's going on. And generally it's when we start to get older, and our bodies have compensated for years and years, and now we're older and the body's saying, I can't do anymore. And so now you're starting to see the impact of what's been going on all these years. And so every so-called disease is a complex of symptoms which signify a crisis of toxemia. And so all diseases are one, everything is connected. And so you may have arthritis and you think, well, I've just got my joints. But then you may have tonsillitis. And you think, okay, well, that's up here. And then you may have bursitis in your shoulder. And it doesn't look like this is all connected because it's in various parts of the body, but it is so very connected because all disease is one, okay? And they all have one origin, starting as a very simple cold, and then when we get a cold, that's the body trying to get rid of the toxins, and then we go ahead and we take something to get rid of the symptoms, so we end up putting poison on top of poison, until one day you actually have this very weakened system, and then these poisons increase until a serious disease results. So if you can see the tree here, you can see that the roots have things like negative emotions, and you spoke about life, right? We have here addictions and physical accesses and denatured foods and lack of rest, which was all things that were mentioned. And then you have these roots that go up, and then you have these branches which is like 30,000 different names of sicknesses. And so if it's A, B, and C, and D, it's this. And if it's E, F, G, and H, it's that. And then if it's I, J, X, and T, it's this. Okay? All of these symptoms, and they kind of group them together, and then they give them a name. Okay? So there's like 30,000 different names. And so you can see there that you've got gastrointestinal disease, which is appendicitis and hemorrhoids and indigestion. And then you've got these mental disorders like self-hate or phobias or child abuse. And then you have these obesity, and with that comes hyperglycemia, and then diabetes and gout. And then you have respiratory ills, bronchitis and asthma and pneumonia. Then you have cancer, and then skin problems. All of these come from the roots of toxemia. And so those that actually espouse to this theory is a Dr. John H. Tillman. And he actually is the one who drew up the tree. And he has a book that was called Toxemia Explained, and it was written in 1926. And he argued that all disease originates from the accumulation of toxins in the blood due to poor elimination. Okay? And then there's a Dr. Bernard Jensen, and he says that he emphasized detoxification and colon cleansing to remove built-up toxins. So these are two that believed in this particular theory. Now there's another one called excess mucus/inflammation. And mucus is the root cause of every disease. That's what these proponents say, because it clogs vital pathways and organs. And you know what that is. You get a cold when you get mucus, right? You blow in your nose or you're coughing up, okay? More in on a normal day, you're not experiencing that. And then there are certain mucus-forming foods that actually cause disease, and those are animal products and dairy, processed grains, or we call them refined grains. And then there's persistent inflammation can lead to excessive mucus production, which then leads to disease. Mucus accumulations in different body parts and systems then develops into specific health conditions. And when mucus production is impaired, that's when you get these pathogens, and they invade our tissues and then they cause inflammation. So it's almost like a cause and an effect, okay? Because each one of us needs, we have our mucous membranes that protect us from dust and allergens, etc. But it's when the pathogens now take over, inflammation comes in, and then now we have this excess mucus. And then excess mucus actually contributes to chronic inflammation, right? And anything that has the word itis is actually inflammation. Arthritis, pneumonitis, which is now pneumonia. Then you had nephritis, which was the kidneys, an infection in the kidneys. And then you have gastritis, and then you have tonsillitis, and bursitis, and tendonitis, and it goes on and on and on, all of these itises. But all of that signifies inflammation. And so chronic inflammation really is recognized as contributing to various diseases, including autoimmune diseases or disorders, cardiovascular disease, and certain cancers from inflammation. And so the proponents of this mucus inflammatory theory is Dr. Sebi. And he's well known, especially in the islands. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's definitely well known in the islands and in the US. But he advocated that excess mucus accumulations leads to disease. And he talks about acid. He has a big thing on acid and alkaline, eating alkaline foods. And then there's Arnold Eckert. And he actually wrote a book called The Mucus-Less Diet and Healing System. And he asserts that mucus-producing foods contribute to disease. And there are others that have continued this work. And so that's how we are able to have an idea. Then there's Dr. Robert Morse, and he espouses and talks about detoxification and suggests that mucus and the lymphatic congestion are primary causes of illness. And then there's traditional Chinese medicine, which talks about the phlegm, and that's the stuff that we spit up, as a pathological factor causing various diseases. viewing it as resulting from disrupted bodily functions. And then there's another theory out there, mineral deficiency. And this one, minerals are essential to our just existence, our life. And we need those key nutrients that play a key role in our physiological processes within the human body. We require calcium, we need phosphorus, we need potassium, okay? And a deficiency in these vital nutrients can lead to a range of health issues depending on the specific mineral lacking. And these minerals are required for detoxification, for human immune function, and for maintaining our pH balance within the body. So when a body is actually mineral deficient, it struggles to neutralize acid. Okay, so now acid is now turning into mucus, right? So you can see the connection here, which leads to inflammation and toxemia. We've heard toxemia, that word already. And a mineral imbalance and deficiencies disrupt the body's energy and pH balance, leading to disease. You guys you've heard about pH balance before, right? You're either too acidic or you're alkaline, too alkaline. You really want to be balanced. And then low minerals equal weak digestion, which equals poor elimination, which equals toxins and mucus buildup. So it's a very, very vicious cycle here. And the proponents of mineral deficiency theory is Dr. Carey Reams, and he was a Seventh-day Adventist. He was a physiologist, and he believed that mineral imbalances cause disease by disrupting energy production at the cellular level. And then there's Dr. Linus Pauling, and he stated that every disease can be traced to a mineral deficiency. And then there's Dr. Joe Wallach, and he wrote a book called Dead Doctors Don't Lie. Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And he argues that nutrient deficiencies are behind most diseases. And then Dr. Max Gerson. Have you heard of Dr. Max Gerson? Okay. He has a therapy. He did a lot of work with chronic diseases and a lot of work with cancer. And there's a Gerson clinic. I can't remember where it is now, but I think his wife continues his work. And he focused on replenishing depleted minerals to reverse disease. And then there's Hippocrates, who's the father of medicine. Now, interesting thing, allopathic medicine calls him the father of medicine, but he actually was more of a naturopath than an allopathic doctor. Allopathy didn't exist back then. But Hippocrates, considered the father of medicine, has often been attributed with the statement, all diseases begin in the gut, right? Highlighting the significance of digestive health. And his theory looked at the four humors, or the four liquids in the body: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And he said that they need to be balanced, these fluids, with disease arising if they're not balanced. And he recognized the importance of the bodily fluid like phlegm. However, his approach looked more at balance rather than looking at mucus or mineral deficiency. Okay? So that's our four perspectives. So how is it all connected? Well, toxemia causes mucus formation, which causes a mineral depletion. Okay? The body produces mucus to trap and remove toxins. That's why we have a mucous membrane. The detox organs, which is our liver, our kidneys, and our colon, they get overloaded. And then toxins actually block the mineral absorption, which then leads to deficiencies. Mucus overload leads to chronic inflammation, which leads to toxemia and nutrient deficiency. You're seeing some repetition of these words here. Excess mucus blocks our pathways and then causes inflammation and blocking nutrient absorption. This then weakens our detoxification function and mineral levels, and then this creates a vicious cycle. And then mineral deficiency goes into weak detoxification, which then causes toxemia and mucus overload. And so without minerals, the body cannot properly detoxify or balance pH. The body requires minerals. So toxins accumulate, forcing the body to produce more mucus. So it's a vicious cycle. And then when we talk about the gut, we get gut dysbiosis, which then leads to mucus layer damage, which then leads to increased intestinal permeability. So if there's an imbalance in the gut, which is called dysbiosis, this can then degrade the protective mucus layer in the intestines. And then as a result, we end up having harmful substances that actually enter our bloodstream, which can then lead to inflammation and disease. So you can see that there is a vital connection between all of these. And so how is it all connected? Well, toxemia, excess mucosal inflammation, mineral deficiencies, and gut imbalances are all part of the same disease process, each one worsening the other. Any thoughts before I move? Was that new to you? Have you heard anything like that before?
I'm wondering if a lot of conventional medicine then is just treating symptoms without really treating the cause.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, they're not actually, no one gets cured from taking medication. You start taking medication, I've had some clients that have been on the same medication for like 15 years, and the doctor just keeps writing a prescription. So they're not trying to cure them, they're keeping them as lifetime clients. The other thing too is that I have clients in the US and clients in Bermuda. Some are 80, some are 60, and some are 40. And everybody's on the same medication for the same issue. So it's just, this is what you give when somebody has this. And it's no differentiation about age or gender or anything. Everybody gets the same dose. The same medication, maybe a different dosage, but it's all the same. So you're absolutely right. They're not looking at cure, not at all.
And as it relates to the mucus though, I am asthmatic.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard of it before, but I kind of watch my body and I realize that anytime I have too much congestion on my chest is when I get really, really sick. So my goal is always to try and get the mucus off.
Yes.
So that's interesting.
Yes, and then the mucus comes from the environment, from the toxins coming in and not getting eliminated out. And so now you've got this vicious cycle that is just perpetuating, right? And that's it. You go and you get a prescription, you get an antibiotic, and then the antibiotic bears the symptoms or gets rid of the symptoms, and then a couple of months later it comes back. And it's generally worse than when it was the first time. And then we get another round of antibiotics and we push it down again. And then it comes back somewhere else worse again, right? And then the antibiotics just don't work. Well, we think they don't work, but they really don't. But, it's just kind of getting rid of the symptomology, not getting the root cause. I ask every question, and when I have any client that comes, my question is why? Let's get to why. And most people just want to get rid of the symptom. And I'm like, I don't treat symptoms, I want to know why. Why are you having this? As opposed to, so we can get to the root cause, the roots of the cause, and let's get rid of the whole thing, rather than just putting a Band-Aid on your symptoms. Yes. Thanks for those comments. So types of diseases, there's two types, and we know this, infectious diseases and then non-infectious diseases. And the infectious diseases are the colds, and then the flu, and then chicken pox, and measles, and nowadays COVID, and all of those things are infectious diseases. You can pass them over to others. But then there are non-infectious diseases, and these are most other diseases that you cannot pass to someone else. But these are like cancer, heart disease, and genetic disorders. You can't generally pass those to, you can't pass diabetes to somebody or high blood pressure to somebody.
What about seizures?
Pardon?
You can pass that through the family.
What's that?
You can pass seizures through family.
Seizures through the family? Well, a lot of times, when I think of, they say that things run in families. I think that we are predisposed, and that if our lifestyle is the same, then those things continue. Yes? Mostly.
Well, how can you get rid of it? Are there ways to get rid of it?
Well, again,
If you have it, you're taking pills for it?
then again, the question is why, right? And so like when I take a client, I do a history. And a woman, I ask, how many children have you had? And how was the pregnancy? And did you breastfeed? For women, right? And most of my clients have been women. I do have men clients now, but we do a history. And it's
Because
not,
I've been taking pills since I was a child.
right.
I've been going to Halifax, getting wires and stuff
Yes,
in my
to
head.
look at your brain. But the question would always be why? And what has happened in your life?
I don't know why. The
No,
doctors,
I know, but I'm just
the
saying.
doctors know that, I don't.
Right, but no, I'm not asking you to answer. I'm just saying, my questions would be why? Let's go back and see why we're where we are. And then that may be a way to find out why.
Because if I could get off them, I would.
I'm sure you would. And so, but thank you for that comment. And so, there are then these lifestyle diseases. Those of us, well, all of us really, when you think about your grandparents, what did they die from?
Old age.
Old age, mostly, right?
Or
Your
accident.
parents, old age,
Hard work.
hard work. But nowadays, people are dying most people, my grandmother died of old age. But now people are dying from something. And most times it's lifestyle diseases that people are dying from. You go back years, what did your grandparents die from? Well, they just got old and they died. Okay? But now somebody dies from cancer or from, kidney issues or from, right? As opposed to of. So we are definitely succumbing to lifestyle diseases nowadays. And these are influenced by the way that people, what they eat and their lifestyle. You mentioned that earlier. And they are associated with the way a person or a group of people lives. And so I don't necessarily subscribe to that it runs in your genes. I mean, I do believe that there are things that can pass. However, if you're eating the way that your mother ate and she ate the way her grandmother ate, and et cetera, then these things you can guarantee. There's one family that I know, one of my close friends, her nephew, and he is morbidly obese, and his wife is obese, and all of the children are obese. But they sit down at 10 o'clock and they eat pizza. 10 o'clock at night, right? And then they drink soda, and then they eat chips on top of that. And then they go to bed. And then they get up and they do the same thing over and over again. They had a family picnic, and she was telling me this afterwards, and she said, they came to the picnic and they ended up ordering pizza and stuff from the fast food because they didn't want to eat, the children didn't eat the regular picnic type food, right? Which is traditional Bermuda food, which is still not healthy for you. But they didn't even want that. So they had to go buy food, even though they had paid for food for the picnic, but they don't want the food. It's too healthy for them, But both, the whole family is just really, really obese. And so these lifestyle diseases are non-communicable, you can't pass them, but they're caused from lack of exercise, unhealthy eating, drinking alcohol, faulty elimination, toxicity, inflammation, substance use disorders, and smoking tobacco. That's where these come from. They are very expensive to treat, and they are expected to increase throughout the years. And so more and more people now, it's almost like when people hit 55, everybody's on high blood pressure medication. That just seems to be the norm. I was talking to, last weekend we had a family life, you may have heard of them, the Olivers, Willie and Elaine Oliver. They were in Bermuda, and they did a a marriage seminar. And, you know, we were just talking, and she says, oh, you know, high blood pressure, pre-diabetic. And I said, well, you're at the age. You know, that's when it generally starts to show up, because that's the age that it really manifests itself, if you haven't been really taking care of yourself really well. And so I shared a few things with her. She was like, oh, I thought it was a pharmaceutical thing. I said, no. We're at the age where at about 55, 60, the body starts to kind of have aches and pains. You guys are young, but that's when we start to feel things around that age. And so, do you know that more than 90% of human illnesses are caused by errors in diet? Diet, what we put in our mouths and what we do, and what we drink, by eating foods that are not meant for human consumption. There are things that humans eat that dogs won't even eat, but we'll eat it. It's not even food. Most of the stuff is not even food that we eat, but our animals won't even eat it, won't even touch it. And so these include cardiovascular disease, hypertension, heart attack, stroke, atherosclerosis, and arteriosclerosis. And then some cancers. Then there's type 2 diabetes and obesity, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. And then, of course, there's others. So I like this, this quote, genes load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. Okay? So even though you may be predisposed to something, how you live determines whether you get that disease. And so the key takeaways are health is easy maintained once it is achieved. Lifestyle leads to poor health and disease. Toxemia, excess mucus, mineral deficiency, and gut imbalances are all part of the disease process. And personal choices in lifestyle can determine health or disease. We have the choice of how we want to be. And so, we looked at Nova Scotia,